Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the end of the week and the unspoken truth. I'm your host, Robert Bruss, and I'm joined by my good mate,
so
Ed
we all
Anderson.
know that we're supposed
G'day,
to
Ed.
eat.
How you doing, mate?
about that?
How's
Sorry.
the end of your week there? You're all fingers and thumbs there on StreamYard at the end of the week. What's going on, man?
Well, I was adding my top 5 video.
Oh, there it is. That's in there.
It's the end of the week, and I gotta tell you though, I kind of the weekend I wait for Monday to roll around so we can do this again. You know, I really enjoy doing this video. So
I wait for Sunday to rock around so I can have a sleep in because I'm getting out of bed at I wake up at 3:30, but I don't get out of bed till about 4 o'clock. And then it takes me an hour to get ready and get organised and everything like that. But then Sunday rocks around and I'm lying in bed at 3:30 in the morning because my body clock's there. I'm like, fucking kidding me? Come on, man. I got to sleep in just for one day. But look, let's see what happens.
Yeah, I hope people appreciate that. You know, Rob gets up really early for these shows, and so hope everyone's grateful. I am.
I love the front half of the day, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know about you folks out there watching and listening. Let us know your thoughts in the comments today about what we're discussing on today's show. We cover a wide range of topics. As I was looking for a couple of files on my computer today, I looked back through the week. I just clicked on all the folders that were open because this is a folder for every day of the week. And there's literally hundreds of files that I've created over the week because I'm making all sorts of different videos and things are happening for me. And today is no different. We've got a lot going on in today's show. I've got a bunch of things that I want to share with people in relation to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. I think I've figured out what all the fuss was about. I'll show you on a map. I'll show you the deep state map and I'll let you guys decide what you think about my opinion there, but it might be correct. And I think I've figured out the fuss that's there. Anyway, the Americans have also said that they're going to give Ukraine cluster munitions, and we just seem to be edging over these lines every couple of weeks. And, you know, cluster munitions are actually outlawed, and the United States, Ukraine and Russia, funny enough, are some of the only countries in the world that haven't signed the declaration to outlaw those weapon systems. If you don't know what they are, I'll take a couple of minutes to explain that to you and explain what type of cluster munitions the Ukrainians will be getting and whether or not that will make a difference on the battlefield. I'm not sure it makes a difference on the battlefield because they're employed for a variety of different reasons in a variety of different ways. And when you look at the front lines and what's actually going on, I kind of scratch my head and wonder if that actually makes any difference. As you know, ladies and gentlemen, Ed and I have been talking about central bank digital currencies for a little while. In fact, it's been going on for 2 years, this conversation, maybe a little bit longer. And we feel that this is just around the corner. And Ed's got a really comprehensive report for us here today about the upcoming monetary tyranny that central bank digital currencies are. So it's a very scary proposition and there's a lot going on today's show. And I'm looking forward to sharing all of this with everybody. Ed, have you got any opening remarks as we kick off here, mate?
Just a special shout out to everyone in my Hey Ed WhatsApp group and everyone watching on the Hey Ed YouTube channel, because we do stream now on the Hey Ed YouTube channel. So, hey guys.
We're going to start streaming on the Hey Ed Twitter channel as well. I'm going to plug that in before I let you go today. So the next stream we go, we're going to get that up there as well. So we're across 4 platforms in Facebook, my personal, Ed's personal, the Minnesota Side Hustle, the Unspoken Truth, and then across my 2 YouTube channels, Ed's channel and both the Twitter channels as well. So it's a really comprehensive way to get the message out there, that's for sure.
Yeah, now today's topics, at least mine, I don't know about Rob's. Rob just talks about nuclear war, so you know how unimportant that is. No one cares about nuclear war anymore. They should, but my topic, you might think is dry, but this is really, really important. So I do ask you that bear with me. Give me 10 minutes of your life to study this, because this is going to direct your lives imminently, and you really need to know what's going on.
All right, should we get straight into it and take a look?
Okay, yeah, let's. Okay, so again, now I promise you that this presentation will go by quickly. Chances are Rob will stop it along the way so that we can comment on it. So we'll break it up a little bit for you. It is about 15 minutes long in total, but please don't leave. Please stick around for this. This is an important one. Especially
Important
you,
stuff.
Rob. Don't go make coffee or something. You know, just,
I'm ready. I got the coffee. I've got my notepad and my pen, and I'm ready to ask questions and figure out what's going on. Ladies and gentlemen, these topics are really important. Sometimes the things that we talk about are a bit dry in finance and economics and politics and things like that. But I really believe that you've got to keep one ear and one eye on the news at all times in your life. You don't have to give it too much attention. Don't give it any more than about half an hour's worth of attention per day, and plug into something like this, like The Unspoken Truth. There's heaps of channels out there just like ours, and there's some entertainment value there as well. You get to know the personalities, you get to know the people, and you get to know the stories behind the news that will really affect you. I don't know about you, Ed, but I think that probably 99% of what you see out there in media and social media has no direct impact on you. And that's why we constantly talking about nuclear war, constantly talking about the war in Ukraine, because it's going to spill over and then it affects everybody. And this central bank digital currency is a topic that we've been talking about for a couple of years, as I mentioned. And that is important because the reason for that is it's going to affect us all. It's going to change the way of life that we lead. And if you don't know about this and there's no heads up for you, you don't know that this is coming down the pike, all of a sudden one day this is all going to change and you're going to go, what? What's happening? Really? It's going to upset you and be very discombobulating. And this will stop all of that from happening because you're ready for it. You're kind of like, all right, roll it out, whatever, I'm ready.
Word of the day, discombobulating. All right, so
there it is. Like getting punched, man. You're like,
hello there, and welcome back. Today, I want to talk to you about a very serious issue. And I felt the need to talk about this today because I firmly believe that imminently my own government, the United States of America, is going to ban me from criticizing their precious CBDC that they're going to roll out any day now. And I can't believe I'm saying that. I can't believe I'm actually saying that my government is going to ban me from criticizing them. But I believe that's going to happen. So I want to make sure I get this message out now while I still can. If you don't mind, please give this video a like, and let's help the algorithm get this message out. Maybe even share this video to anyone you can think of. But the global elites want to implement a global monetary system that will enslave all of us. And that's what I want to talk about today. Yes, it is true. This is not a conspiracy theory, okay? This is all out there. This is all public knowledge. The global elites around the world are taking efforts to completely reset the global monetary system through the use of CBDCs. Now, America's version of a CBDC is nicknamed the Fed coin, but every major central bank throughout the world are developing their own CBDCs, and they're all working in conjunction. And this is a push by the global elites headed by the World Economic Forum, the World Bank, the IMF, the United Nations, the Federal Reserve. They've been coordinating this for years, and now it is here. Now, the Federal Reserve seems to have been doing anything they can think of to devalue the US dollar. Now, there is a debate to be had there. Are they just incompetent, or is it by design? Make no mistake that the leftists have infiltrated every element of our government. And inside that category of leftists, that's where the socialists reside. That's where the communists reside. That's where the fascists reside. Okay, so to set the stage for you, I want to remind you of a few quotes from important figures in history. So Henry Kissinger: if you control the food, you control a nation. If you control the energy, you control a region. If you control the money, you control the world. Mayor Rothschild: let me issue and control a nation's money, and I care not who writes the laws. So there he's saying, if you control the money, nothing else matters. And of course, Vladimir Lenin: the best way to destroy the capitalist system is to debauch the currency. So there you have it. Our own Federal Reserve has been following the advice of Vladimir Lenin. Okay, so what inspired me to make this video is that a couple of weeks ago, the World Economic Forum held their summer meeting in China. It's often referred to as the summer version of their Davos meeting. And they outlined how they can use their upcoming central bank digital currencies to control and mold societies. And it was a frightening and disgusting display of their arrogance. But as evil as we all know this plan is, they're succeeding. America's version of our CBDCs is going to roll out, within weeks. It's coming. It's going to be here. Let's take a look at an article out of Zero Hedge that described this meeting. So out of Zero Hedge, CBDCs with expiration dates restrictions could target social policies, economist tells WEF. Now, these were comments made at the summer version of the WEF Davos meeting, and it was held in Tianjin, China, also known as the Summer Davos. Cornell University professor Eswar Prasad explained that the global economy is at the cusp of physical currency essentially disappearing, and that programmable CBDCs and the technology behind these new forms of money could take the international economic landscape toward a dark path or a better place. Okay, as far as the elites are concerned, they're going to consider it a better place. For us, we're going to consider it the dark path, but it's the road that we are on. And you saw there where he talked about the programmability. That's really at the core of the evil of this CBDC program, is the programmability of these CBDCs. And I'm about to show you why it's evil. Prasad contended that one of the huge potential gains for the digitization of money is the programmability of CBDC units and attaching expiry dates. Governments can also utilize central bank money to socially engineer society. You could have a potentially better, or some people might say a darker world, where the government decides that units of central bank money can be used to purchase some things, but not other things that it deems less desirable, like, say, ammunition or drugs or pornography or something of that sort. And that is very powerful in terms of the use of a CBDC, and I think also extremely dangerous to central banks. CBDCs possess unique characteristics and could be employed as a conduit for economic policies in a very targeted way, or more broadly, for social policies. So let's talk a little bit about that expiration date feature. What he's saying there is what we could do is we could put an expiration date of any of the units that you have. All right, so this is what will happen, right? You're going to go to work, you're going to make your money, but instead of being paid in the usual fiat currencies and you put it in your savings account, you're going to be paid in CBDCs, in their little units, right? And those units are going to sit in a bank account that you're going to have probably at the Federal Reserve. And each one of those units could have an expiration date. Say, you have to use it or lose it, by X day. So you're not going to get the option in that scenario of saving your money. No, it's use it or lose it. So this is how they make you a slave. You could end up working for free. Just say you saved, 3 months worth of income. Over the year you saved 3 months worth of that income in your Federal Reserve account. But they expired. Now they're gone. So essentially, you worked for free for those 3 months. You were a slave. You were an indentured servant. Now, why would they do that? Well, first of all, they want to be able to control what you spend your money on. They don't want you buying things that they deem bad. Maybe a car that runs on gasoline, maybe a donation to a political party that they deem is inappropriate. Maybe you want to buy cigarettes or alcohol or a hamburger or any kind of actual meat product. Maybe you want to buy a steak that's not made out of bugs. Well, if they deem that that's not good, then they won't allow you to use your digital tokens to buy, because they programmed that into the token. Okay, so the idea that they could focus it to grow the economy faster and more velocity in the system, they could say things like, okay, well, this particular industry is suffering, so we're going to demand that you use some of your tokens to support that industry. So this is what they're talking about when they say they can use this as a way to mold society. They do it with the money. Are you starting to get the picture here? Are you starting to see why this is a bad idea and why this is a direct assault on our freedoms? If you start getting too wealthy, all they have to do is start putting little expiration dates on a good number of your tokens. That's how they keep you in place. That's how they keep you in line. They don't give you a chance to get ahead. They don't give you a chance to have too much power. Okay, so listen, right now, you're probably thinking that I am crazy. But listen, this is their plan. I'm not making this stuff up. They openly talk about their plans. And when a bad person tells you his plans, it's always wise to believe him. All right, so let's move on. Integrating expiry dates with CBDCs has already been discussed by various central banks worldwide. With this feature, enabled digital cash could not be spent after its expiry date. Consumers whose digital cash expired would automatically receive the funds back into their online account without having to file a claim. An expiry date that is too soon is inconvenient, but a date too far in the future slows down the reimbursement of lost digital cash. China has been exploring expiration dates for the digital yuan, suggesting that it would no longer be usable if not spent in a specific time frame. Expiring money would increase both the velocity of money and overall economic activity, similar to applying a negative rate to digital cash. In practice, a carrying fee on money would encourage people to spend it and thus prevent it from being hoarded. Indeed, CBDC advocates say digital money can be a flexible instrument to micro-target sectors, regions, interest rates, and social economic demographics with real-time feedback. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about their carrying fee that they could impose. They can put a carrying fee. Maybe they're charging you interest on the money that you're not spending, right? So it's like having a negative interest rate at the bank, all right? You get your money out of your bank and you do something productive with it. And what they probably will do here is they're going to put a carrying fee on your digital currencies. So you'll be saying to yourself, okay, so listen, this carrying fee is costing me money. So any money I'm sitting in my Federal Reserve bank account, I'm losing money on it through the fees. So you're going to want to spend it so you can get some use out of your money, right? That's how they get you to not save your money. That's how they keep you poor. That's how they keep you subservient. I'm not making this stuff up. This is what they're doing. And as far as molding society, part of the segment there said they could limit things you could buy, like drugs and pornography. Trust me, they're not going to limit your access to drugs, alcohol, and pornography, okay? Because those kind of things, they're debasing our society, and that's what they want. And we see that every day in our society. Our society is being morally corrupted. Our youth are actively attacked on a daily basis. And the same thing with the food, okay? They want to get you eating, bug-based meat. Listen, do not confuse these central bank digital currencies with Bitcoin or other actual digital currencies. Unlike Bitcoin, CBDCs are going to be programmable. That makes all the difference in the world. Listen, they want to eliminate paper money altogether. Once this CBDC gets implemented, the days of physical money are numbered. There are many countries right now who are actively pulling cash out of the system. Okay, and now let me finish this up by telling you exactly how they're going to get you onto their CBDCs. One of their most evil schemes is going to be free money, and that's going to give you a big dopamine hit, and it's going to be big. It's going to be something like $5,000 or $10,000 in CBDCs that they're going to give you. And the vast majority of the people in the world, they're going to say, that's going to be a big deal for them. And so they'll go for it. Let me share with you a little unfun fact. 12% of American adults have no money in savings, zero. 27% have less than 1,000. 18% have less than 10,000. So 39% of adult Americans have less than $1,000 in savings. So imagine those people getting 5,000, 10,000, maybe more in one shot from the government. And all you have to do is go on your cell phone and open up an account at the Federal Reserve, and bam, you're going to have more money than you probably ever had. That dopamine hit is going to be, it's going to be irresistible to a lot of people. And the government is just going to consider that an acquisition cost. Once they have you in the system, they have you for life, right? But boy, a quick 5,000, 10,000, maybe more. Now, I'm sure it'll have an expiration date on it, okay? You have 90 days to spend it, okay? And you probably can't spend it on some things, right? But you can probably use it, for a new car or televisions. And this would be their fake way of like jump-starting the economy short term. They're going to look brilliant. They're going to look like heroes, but understand their end game. Now we have a whole generation of people who think that they don't have to work for a living, that money just shows up at the mailbox. We have a whole class of people now in the world who are homeless. Just look at California. Look at any major city in America, and you'll see encampments of homeless people. And they're given just enough money to survive, barely, right? Listen, I strongly believe that a lot of these people who are homeless, they adopted this as a lifestyle choice. I know that the vast majority of those people could get jobs if they wanted to, but that would require getting up in the morning, showering, getting on the bus, getting in the car, and going to work. Because this is a relatively recent phenomenon. Just all of a sudden, overnight, boom, millions of people all homeless at the same time. So is that what you want? Do you want to be cattle? Let me ask you, would you rather sit at home and collect your universal basic income check with just enough money to survive on and watch reruns and get fat? Or would you rather get in your car, go to work, be a productive member of society, and control your own destiny? So this is the plan that's out there by these elites. And unless they are stopped, this is the future we're looking at. We have our own Federal Reserve pushing this. We have our own president of the United States, if you can call him that, fully backing this. This is what the lefts want. This is their plan. All right, so what can you do? Well, reduce your exposure to your bank, meaning get your money out of the damn bank. Now, when you do that, you're still sitting on a piece of garbage, right? Fiat currencies are garbage. So take as much of that money as you can and put it into gold and silver. When you get gold and silver, you're not buying anything, right? You're just moving your assets from a really crappy asset class, fiat currencies, into gold and silver, which is actual money. Gold and silver is the only actual money in the world. And this will get you outside the system. This will give you freedom. This is a way to escape slavery. And finally, establish streams of passive recurring income. Now, I know we have our mantra and it goes by pretty quickly, but listen, this is important stuff. And when I say establish streams of passive recurring income, I mean it. And as that extra income comes in, you do the same thing. You take that income and you convert it into these guys or some kind of income producing vehicle. Listen, at Unspoken Truth, we have a community and it costs like 50 cents a day. I mean, 50 cents a day. I mean, you kidding me? You can be part of a community and we can show you how to be independent. And if you want specific programs, reach out to me, reach out to Rob, and I'll tell you which programs that I use to acquire my gold and silver and establish streams of passive recurring income. I don't have to be doing this, I promise you, okay? I am financially independent. I'm golden, and I want you to be golden too. Let's get you squared away. Reach out to me, reach out to Rob, and let's talk about it. Listen, these are very serious times, and history is going to be very unkind to this generation with what we're doing to the world. There are some things that you won't be able to change, but there are some things that you can control. And those things that you can control, you should get on. You don't have time to waste anymore. Our CBDCs are coming within weeks. Now, I know this is kind of a serious topic, but if you don't mind, could you give us a like? And that'll help the algorithm push this message out. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And please give us a comment. Tell me what you think about what I just said. And that's my little alert for the day. Ed Anderson, live from Minnesota, signing out.
Matt, digital tyranny, hey? There was one thing that you missed from the report.
I'm sure. Hey, I cut it down, man. Yeah, go ahead. What did I miss?
You missed the QR code. Where do I sign up at the Fed, man, to get my $5,000?
I'll tell you. I'll send you a referral code so I get credit.
You've got an affiliate link.
Yeah, I got an affiliate link.
Don't be surprised if that's what they do.
I wouldn't be surprised. Why didn't I think of that? I should probably propose that if they haven't thought of it already. Yeah, that's.
All jokes aside, you did miss one small thing in there because what you're talking about is a carrot and stick approach. Like, how would they get you to actually comply with something like that? How would they? Oh, I've got all my money in the bank, and you want me to go and open an account at the Federal Reserve? Okay, I'll open the account, and now you're going to give me money for it as well? Okay, cool. So I think if you said that to me pre-COVID, I'd go, piss off, man. I'm not doing that. Like, why? My life is completely fine as it is. I don't need to go and do something like that. So I would just kind of resist you just for the sake of resisting, and I would resist because the government is telling me to do it. Yeah. And I just don't do anything the government tells me to do. I'm a law-abiding citizen, but I don't do anything that the government tells me to do. It's as simple as that. I'm not. I'm just refusing to do that because I don't trust them and I don't believe them. And the last couple of years has proven beyond an unequivocal doubt that I'm right, that you can't trust the government, but it's also proven your theory of here's some free money, come and get it, and then stay at home. And we've seen over the last couple of weeks, particularly here in Australia, there's been a lot of news headlines. I haven't really spoken about it much because it's not really a story worth talking about. But there's lots and lots of businesses here in Australia where they're saying, you must return to work. You have to come back to the office. And people are like, yeah, nah, I'm good, yeah. And they're not doing it. And that's because the government a couple of years ago said, you need to stay home. You can work from home. That's fine. Just work from home. And everyone's like, oh my God, my business is going to die. And they figure out how to do it. And then there's some businesses like mine, the photography business and the videography business, that completely went away. And the government went, oh, sorry about that. Here's some money. By the way, they gave us a lot of money, not just a small amount. For a small business, when you're forking over $10,000 or $20,000 to a small business, that's a lot of money. And does that tie you over? Does that carry your bills? Does that look after you? Actually, yeah, it did. And it kept it going. Did the business come back afterwards? No, because there was just so much uncertainty and nobody really knew what was going to happen. And there's a very large percentage of people that took the money and their businesses still went under because they were unable to sustain that. They couldn't pay the rent. There's a whole reason that it didn't work. But to your point, when you're saying the way that they're going to get everybody over there is by incentivizing people with money, they've already done that. And they've absolutely proven beyond all reasonable doubt that it works. And the vast majority of people that had a small business in Australia applied to the government to get the grants, and the grants were released like so fast, man. You apply for it and it's just a rubber stamp, like it's a rubber stamp. And then all of a sudden, like, hey, look, there's $10,000 in the account from the government and we don't have to pay it back. How about that? That's pretty cool, isn't it? And lots and lots, and then they release more money. Here's another 10 grand. Here's another 5 grand. Oh, you've got staff? Here's a couple of bucks for each one of them as well, so you can keep them. It's like, what? Really? When you think of government, I don't know about you. When I think of government, I think, man, that's so slow. So slow. But actually, no. They can move at lightning speed if they want to. Yeah, they can. And so I looked at it. There's a couple of points there I want to discuss with you. You talked about a carrying fee. Yeah. So, and that's the way they're going to, your credits will expire, but they won't expire. They're going to be in your bank, but they're just going to, the amount of digital currency you will have will diminish because of the carrying fee. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you think that can't happen, you're wrong, because it's happening already to your money. It's called inflation. Yeah. Right now, you put $50 in the bank, but inflation goes up 4% this month. Then the $50 is now worth, you can only buy 46% of what you could buy previously, or 96% rather, of what you could buy previously, because inflation chopped away at a little bit of that cash that you put in there. So the carrying fee is a real thing, but it already exists. So there's a lot of scuttlebutt around this as well. Like, it's a conspiracy theory. They'll never do it. They'll never do this. And I think, yeah, that's right. But the reason I think people on that side of the argument think that it's scuttlebutt is because they look at it and go, there's no way they could ever do something like that because it seems too far-fetched. But there are elements of truth within it, but it seems so far-fetched because it will completely radicalize and change our society.
Well, could you imagine writing a movie script like this? No one would believe it.
Truth is stranger than fiction, right? That's actually the way that you describe that.
And they can do whatever they want. That's the whole point. Once they have a programmable CBDC, they can do whatever they want. And I think now the fee, it's kind of like, anyone who has a checking account or a bank account, there are fees for everything, right? There's all these little fees, fee for this, fee for that. And this is going to be like one of those. It'll be specific. It'll be a line item. It'll be a carrying fee. Now, they may or may not do it. They'll implement it. Now, why would they do it? They would do it in times when they think you have too much money. And they want to encourage you. What I liked in that article was when they used the word hoarding. We don't want people to...
That was a word that I wrote. Nobody hoards money, man. Not hoarding money like I'm saving newspapers and headlines or some shit like that.
We don't want them to hoard their money. So
not hoarding. I'm saving it for something, or I'm going to buy something, or I'm investing it.
Semantics, right? Yeah.
When you talk about, You talk about the implementation of something like this and you think, man, it seems so dystopian and all the bad things about it. But it's really, actually, when you think about it in practice, it's not really that much different to what we currently have right now. It's not much different. The difference is they have all the control. Right now, you as an individual have all the control. Because if you choose to, you can go to the ATM or to the bank and you can withdraw your money. You can. For all the heartache that causes and all the pain involved and associated with something like that, if you really want to, you can still do that. You can still get the cash out and remain anonymous in society if you want to. But the reality is 99% of people just couldn't give a shit about it. They're like, whatever, man, I'll just tap my phone or I'll tap my card. It's like, it's easy. Like, why? I don't need cash, man. I haven't had cash. I was doing the washing the other day and I put my hand in Danielle's pants to make sure, because sometimes she's got like a lipstick in there or a lip gloss or something, so her stuff doesn't go through the wash, right? I make sure it's empty, and I put my hand in, it's like $5 bill, and I'm like, what the fuck's that, you know? I put my hand in the other pocket and there's like coins in it. I'm like, what's she doing with cash? But then I realized she gets paid in cash.
Good for her. Oh, nice.
She gets paid in cash. So she goes and works in a burger shop, and she's getting like good money for a young kid, right? And at the end of the week, I'm like, how much did you get? And she's driving often, right? Because I'm teaching her to drive. I'm like, how much did you get paid this week? And she's like, I don't know, I didn't check. And we get home and she's like, 50, 100, 150, 200. And she's like $400 or $500 in cash.
Whoa.
And then the other day, not yesterday, the day before, she goes, oh, I'm going up to the bank, Dad. I'm going to put that money in the bank. And I'm like, I've been telling you to do that for a while, but maybe you shouldn't do that. I said, how much money have you got? And she goes, I don't know. I'm like, what? You don't know? And I counted it out. It's like $1,300 or $1,400 or something like that. And I'm like, you're going to put that in the bank? You're going to do that? Yeah, you're going to get it into that. That's exactly right.
Take her to a coin shop or hook her up with the program that I'm in.
Yeah.
There you go.
Lock in the value of that money there straight away.
Remember,
exactly.
Any money she has sitting in the bank is not her money.
And it's diminishing as well.
Diminishing the value. So, I mean, she should have a couple hundred, 300 there, and a little bit there as a token amount to, you know, every once in a while, you know, with a debit card, because we still live in a fiat currency society, right? So, maybe a little bit, but, you know, I mean, she's a teenager who lives at home, so.
There's no reason for her not to have it as cash in a wallet like that. So, or, you know, in a drawer at home. There's no reason she can't do that.
Well, better to have it in her wallet than in a bank, in my opinion.
I think I agree. Yeah, I agree with that as well. But she does a lot of electronic transactions online. She's always buying stuff as well.
Yeah, so she has got something in the bank, but a modest amount. Look, even me, I only keep 2 or 3 months worth of bill paying in the bank. That's it.
Yeah, the rest of it's elsewhere, where it's actually appreciating in value or actually creating cash flow for you. That's exactly where it should be. Ed, you mentioned that, like, you said that this is imminent. How imminent do you think it actually is?
Well, they say by the end of the month, it should be out.
What?
Yep. They've been saying this for a while now. Now, this is the thing, right? They haven't made any really, you don't see any commercials about it. You don't see any real publicity about it. I think, you know, well, with all the studies they've done, and I promise you, they've done studies. They've done, you know, research on the side. They've done the little polling. And I'll say most people do not want this. I think a poll I referenced one of them in one of my recent videos. I believe it's like 59% of adults don't want this, who know about it. No, here it is. I said 49% of the public don't even know what it is. They don't know anything about it. Yeah. And of the 50% who do know about it, 69% of them don't want it. So this is a wildly unpopular product the way it stands right now. So I can see why they're not making a big deal out of rolling it out. This is going to be kind of like a stealth rollout. They're going to ease. It's like putting someone into a hot tub. They're going to ease them in slowly, right? That's what this is going to be. And I don't think cash is going to be outlawed by the end of the year. But I think their intent is to have actual cash gone in like a 3 to 5 year period. I mean, we already.
Yeah, I don't think that it'd ever be outlawed. I just think the use of it is just completely diminished, where it becomes irrelevant to people. Like, I don't use it. Like,
well, that's already the case, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the Australian banks, they don't spit out cash very much anymore at the ATMs, right? So And again, they're normalizing people to this idea of using. But remember, every time you buy something with that debit card, Rob, they've got a record of it, man. Well, what happens when
apparently yesterday someone was buying something with my debit card as well when I looked at my bank account. Yes.
Really?
And then I call the bank and go, hey, someone's using my card. What's going on here? That's not me. And they're like, you got to go back to the app and get onto the live chat, and then they'll chat with you. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'll get on the live chat. There's nobody there. And I'm like, here I am, like 12 hours later. Nobody's got back to me.
Whoa.
So somebody's got my card out there. I can't cancel my card. I can't do anything. What I did, I just moved all the money out of that account to another account. So if they try and use it again, nothing will happen.
That's good. But still, the idea, when you do things electronically, you're exposed.
Absolutely.
And that's another thing. The CBDCs, hackers are going to have a field day with this guy. I mean, do we trust the government to keep our money secure? I mean, how does that sound?
Maybe that's the last great hope, right? Is that this is enslavement on a global scale, but there's hackers out there going, no, you don't. Watch this.
Yeah, they'll hack people's accounts and they use it to buy Bitcoin and
or they'll try and go and buy a stake or something like that because they're forced to comply with everything that the government puts upon them. They're like, you know what, I'm going to do something about this. And they'll go and try and shut it down, right? There's like a whole army of people out there that just despise the government and everything that they stand for. If they try and impose this type of thing on them, that army will be unleashed against them. And the other thing is, like, if Western economies try and do something like that, the enemies of Western economies, like the BRICS nations, will say, hey, well, just come over here and do it over here. We've got a gold-backed currency over there. Have you got some gold? We'll give you some currency and we'll go over there. And it's like, well, why on earth would I ever use the USD as a medium of exchange or the US Fed coin as a medium of exchange? And to me, that basket of BRICS currencies backed by gold seems like a lot more attractive.
Good morning, Kiev.
There it is. Paulie's got a couple of comments there in the stream there for us. Says the Dutch cabinet has fallen. They've stumbled over the immigration file. So what do we got here? The Prime Minister and 6 other members of the cabinet are WEF agents. Well, of course they are. Yeah, you kind of, I read a comment like that and go, yeah, of course they are. But now if there's evidence about something like that going on, that's really interesting. And that matters, because the conversation that we're talking about here is because it's people like that in the Dutch cabinet that are WEF members talking to Klaus Schwab and his evil band of cronies that are saying, yeah, let's roll this out. This is what you're going to get. This is going to make the world better. Yeah. And they're trying to make a world a better place. I was thinking yesterday, I shot a video about The Voice and I was editing all of that and I had a problem with the memory card. So the memory card I shot on wasn't working and it literally took 16 hours to download the 2 files because I just couldn't be bothered shooting it again. And I didn't have another card that was handy and I didn't want to go to the shops to buy one. So I just let it go. It was like in no hurry. But one of the things that I was thinking about was how communist societies in the Soviet Union, because I was reading a little bit of the Gulag Archipelago yesterday, how communist societies in Soviet Union and Mao in China had these centralized ideas. And one of we talked a bit about this yesterday, and they tried to industrialize agriculture in China under Mao. And what they did is they brought all of the farmers together into these giant commune farms. And the idea behind it makes sense when you look at it, right? The idea is that we bring all the farmers together, we'll pool the resources, and we'll centralize control of those resources. So we'll document every single thing that they've got as the resources. So how many tractors have they got? How much fertilizer have they got? How many seeds have they got? Where is the land? How much water? And they're centralizing control of all of this. And from a high level, what they're trying to do is make it better. And when I look at something like this with these digital currencies, you're having the same thing happen. The WEF and the powers that be that are behind these ideas are looking at it going, we want to make it better. This is a better way of doing it. This is a new system. This is the global reset. And the people that are part of the WEF, they all buy into that idea. But they buy into that idea without remembering the lessons of the past, that centralized control and socialist control, and socialism just before communism, right? Socialist control of these types of things has never worked, ever. Never in human history has it ever worked. And when I hear you talk about in your report of you have centralized control and programmable money that has an expiry date on it. So now I think of Mao and his agricultural people, right? I look at the same comparison, not the same thing, but the same comparison. So they're trying to control something, whatever that something is. But what they don't understand is the second and third order effect of what it is that they do. And if they do understand the second, third, fourth, and fifth order effect of what they're actually doing, there's no possible way without artificial intelligence, and even AI would bugger this up, but there's no possible way that you could know what effect number 103 is from the result of what you've done. So what is effect number 103 as a result of 9 months of this policy being implemented? If all of these things are considered and all of these factors actually happen, there's no possible way that they could do that. And I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe that the people in the Chinese Communist Party back in the day, in Mao's day,
go ahead.
They didn't intend for the agricultural project. They didn't intend for the agricultural project not to work. They're like, we've got a better idea. Watch where I'm going. We've got a better idea of how to run agriculture. And if we commercialize it and industrialize it and use the human resources we've got, this is what's going to happen. But they couldn't predict the results. And the reason they couldn't predict the results is because they weren't farmers. Because all the farmers on the other end of it are going, what do they want us to do? They want us to do that. We're not doing that. That won't work. And they're like, okay, that won't work. Off to the gulag with you. Off to the firing squad with you. And they just eliminate all of their opposition, which is what the WEF and the governments of the world are doing right now. Don't like that? Get out of here. Jail, digital gulag, close your bank account, out you go. So there's no firing squads today, but the same thing happens to you when you're ejected from society. But the people in the Chinese Communist Party in Mao's era didn't realize what they were doing. And the result of that was a famine that killed 45 million people. And you look at that and you think, the result of this digital currency rollout cannot be predicted. But we know that the same type of centralized control at scale when it comes to food has been tried before, and it failed dismally. It failed in the Holodomor in Ukraine. It failed in, and that was deliberate, by the way, when the Soviets did that to the Ukrainians in the 1930s. It happened here in Mao that I'm talking about in the 1950s. It happened with Pol Pot in the 1970s. This has been tried several times. And if you just look, if you guys in the States just look down the road in Venezuela, you can see it happening there as well. Centralized control of things that should be run by society and run by individuals never ever works. And when you think of how we transact now with cash and how I send an invoice and you pay an invoice, really what we live in is a society based on anarchy. That's really what it is. Because if you provide a service to me, Ed, and then I'm not paying you until the service is delivered, then you send, there you go, Rob, the service is done. There's your invoice for $1,000. And I go, fuck off, mate. I'm not paying that. That's anarchy, right? But because you've supplied the service and I've received the service and I think $1,000 is a fair value, I exchange $1,000 with you. But there's nothing that you could do if I told you to get stuffed. You could probably take me to court, but this is going to be like a 9-month process and you're going to go, well, is it worth $1,000? I'll just write it off. Whatever. I don't care about it. So we actually don't live by the rule of law. We live under anarchy, but we're civilized people, not biting and clawing at each other for food and water and resources, because we've all got a decent enough amount of resources to survive, generally, I'm saying there. So the society where the WEF and the governments of the world want to start controlling the anarchy that we actually live under, that's the rule of law we live under, is under anarchy. Because it's an agreement between people that we do the right thing. It's an agreement between me and the police that I do the right thing. And when I step out of line, the police go, I told you you're not doing the right thing. Here I come with my baton and my gun and I'm going to lock you up. But there's more of us than there is of them. So it doesn't matter how many cops you throw at me or how many times you shoot people, there's more of us than them. And we could resist you. We could fight back against you. We could stop you from imposing those laws upon us because there's more of us than there is of them. But because we live under a society of anarchy where people have agreements, the government's there to do the right thing, we'll do it, we'll let them do that, we'll let that happen. But then the third and fourth and fifth and 110th order effects of it are like the Chinese Communist Party, man, where it creates a famine. So you're opening Pandora's box with something like the Central Bank Digital Currencies because you don't know where it's going to lead. And there's no possible way that you could ever know where that's going to lead. All you do know is that it's going to create massive disruption in society and it won't be a great reset. The computer won't come back on. Klaus wants to go Control Alt Delete and reboot the computer to make it go faster and make it better and live in some utopian future where no one has individuality and they all wear the same uniform. But it's not true.
No. Okay. So, Comrade Bruss, allow me.
Commissar, hey.
Oh, sorry, Commissar. Promoted already. Yeah? Okay.
I'm the card-carrying commissar for the CCP. Good morning, Beijing. Hello, Xi.
So, allow me to retort. Okay. So, there are a few things that I disagree with. The idea that the CCP, that the Chinese Communist parties, their intention was to make things better, make the farming more efficient or whatever. That wasn't their intent. Communism is about making everybody equal, right? They want everybody. Nobody can make more than another guy. Everyone's equal. And so if you have farmers who are really successful because they're smarter and they're doing things better than other farmers, they can't have that. They've got to make everything equal. So the idea of bringing everyone under one umbrella is a one-size-fits-all solution that they apply to everything, which of course doesn't work. But I will argue they didn't really care about that. In a communist system, it is a class system. You have two classes. You have a small elite governing class who make the decisions about everyone else's lives, and then you have everyone else, right? And that is what is going on with the scheme with CBDCs and the New World Order. Klaus Schwab has no interest in what's best for us. He's part of that elite who wants to set the terms. He wants control. There's a reason why all of the largest companies in the world are members of the WEF. Okay, these are beneficiaries. These guys are greedy. These guys want the money. They want to be able to control where you spend your money. They don't want you saving your money. They want you spending your money on their products. They want you buying their stuff. So this is a money grab and a power grab by the elites of the world. And
so before you move off that point, so do you think that the Chinese, their intention was just to like even everything out under that communist ideology, or do you think that? So I agree with that. I agree that that's actually because that's the fundamental driving force behind it. Is no one person is more important than the collective, and if we have to sacrifice a few people to the collective, then so be it. Then that's kind of the driving force. But from the centralized perspective, I think is where I'm going with that is. So forget about the reason behind it, because we can agree to disagree there that there's probably a variety of reasons that they did that. It wouldn't just be one thing. Yeah. But the point is that the people at the top, the elite, the very few at the top that were running it, thought that they had a better way. Well, that's really, and the communist system is the better way because the collective is more important than the individual. So that's the better way. But the reality is they didn't understand the effects of the better way. And that's what I'm saying with the WEF. It's the same thing. They don't understand the effects of a better way.
Okay, that may have been true at the beginning. Maybe in the early days, they thought, but listen, it went on for 60, 70 years before. Yeah. Okay. So maybe that was their intent, but primarily, all along, it's about the communist leadership wanting to be in power. And
I think you're right. You're right there as well, because when you look at when Mao took over, I think it was in 1948. I want to say that he pushed everybody out, the enemy to Taiwan or Formosa back in the day. And then what we're talking about here with the collectivization of agriculture was in the 1950s. So it was literally just a couple of years after he'd won the Chinese Revolution and he was in charge. And then to your point, it's like these communists have been studying Karl Marx, looking to the Soviet Union for the best way to do these things. And we know better. This is how agriculture should run. This is how education should run. And they're implementing their systems. But that's the failing of it, is that they didn't look to the Soviet Union to the lessons of it, and they tried to implement it. And that's what a communist and a socialist will always say, is that, it's never been done properly. It's never been implemented. Well, it doesn't matter how you try and implement it. If you have top-down control of something that requires individual responsibility, like farming, like banking, then it's never going to work. It's going to blow up.
And who owns most of the farmland now? At least in America,
Oh, it's Chinese there as well. Well, I think they changed the law here in Australia to stop foreigners buying all of the outback stations and farms and shit like that. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of foreign ownership laws that have changed here.
I mean, the Chinese and Bill Gates. Bill Gates is the single largest farmland owner in the country.
The scale of what he owns, though, is not as big as what you think. So that statistic is a little bit misleading. If you go and look at a map at what he actually owns, there's not that much compared to what the large conglomerations like Monsanto or whoever those other big ones are. That is extraordinary what they own. They do own a monopoly on that farmland. Bill Gates is just a private owner of that, and he's the largest private owner, but the scale of it is actually quite small.
Yeah, well, whatever the makeup is, the small farm owners, they are crowded out. They are.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what that highlights, isn't it? It definitely highlights that for sure.
And what does a small farmer represent? Self-interest. Capitalism.
A bug that needs to be squashed.
Yeah, and
like a Dutch farmer that needs to be squashed.
There you go.
They're pesky. Those pesky Dutch farmers. It's really not much different to when you look at that comparison. The Dutch government saying to those farmers, "You're using too much nitrogen. It's causing green." They're like, "What the fuck are you talking about? You have no idea how we do this. But look how productive we are, and you're trying to destroy it. It's destroying the environment. It's not destroying the environment. You're just using that as an excuse to get rid of us because we're in the way of the buildings that you want to build." Like what?
Okay. Yeah, and there's another example, right? And that's the case of the EU unelected officials making the decisions for them. Norway, Holland, the Netherlands, these are supposed to be sovereign countries. Why the hell did all of you European countries give up your freaking sovereignty to these jerk-offs, to the leftists, to the socialists, to the communists, unelected in Brussels? Why? What the F?
There's let me take a lighthearted note here for you, Ed, because it's it's pretty cool. So there's I know you don't like Marvel movies or Marvel series or anything like that, but just bear with me here. So there's a new one with Samuel L. Jackson in it, and he plays the character Nick Fury, of course. And Nick Fury gets he disappears in the blip, but then he comes back after the Avengers win the war, and then Nick Fury goes away onto a space station and then comes back to Earth. And on planet Earth, there's a bunch of displaced alien race called Skrulls. So work with me here on the story because it's actually really clever. And the Skrulls are able to assimilate somebody else's, they can shapeshift into human beings so they don't look like aliens. And they look like aliens when you see them. It's a really cool makeup and real clever special effects. But the punchline to what I'm trying to get across here to you is that the Skrulls can live where there's nuclear radiation where humans can't. So what they're trying to do, the storyline is that they're trying to start a nuclear war. And you see the leader of the Skrulls, he's like he's some dude, he's the general, so to speak. And he's in a meeting, and he comes to a meeting, and there's the boss of NATO. There's the president of this country, the president of that country, the president of this. And it's almost a metaphor for the WEF. It's almost like the leader of the Skrulls is Klaus Schwab. It's like reading the tarot cards in the newspaper when you're a kid, right? You can make my Capricorn star sign fit to anything that happened to me during the week. I can make it fit. And this story is like a parable of the WEF and the reptilian aliens that are actually in charge. And this guy, this leader, is Klaus Schwab, and he has all of his minions that have shapeshifted into the boss of NATO, to the president of this, to the president of that. And they're busy creating these terrorist attacks, so NATO launches against Russia and Russia launches against NATO, and they annihilate the world in a nuclear winter. All the humans die and the Skrulls can live there happily ever after because they don't have a planet anymore. So that's the crux of the story. And when you look at the Hollywood story, you write the story and you get drawn all the way into it. You go, well, this is actually a really clever story. You haven't seen an Avengers story like this. But actually, it's happening in real life. And Paulie here in the chat is saying that all of these people are part of the WEF. And Klaus Schwab is the person in charge going, right, I get rid of the farms, do this, get rid of that, stamp that out, introduce the Central Bank Digital Currency, and the humans that are in the way will go away. And I'm not saying they're aliens, not for a second, but I'm saying that the parable in the story is telling you the same thing in real life.
Well, I'll play along. I've got a mind bender for you. What's the name of that guy who snaps his fingers and everyone dies? What's his name?
Yeah, that's the Thanos in the
Thanos.
blip. That's
Okay, so Thanos was an environmentalist.
Yes. Yep.
Right?
There's too many people on Earth. That's Bill Gates. There's too many people in the universe. I'm going to snap my fingers and get rid of half the universe.
That's right. So Klaus Schwab and that crowd, they're all Thanoses. Is that what
truth is stranger than fiction, because if you draw the comparison to the parable in the story, which is just a story, you go, it actually fits. No, it's like reading your star sign. No, it doesn't fit. Yeah, it does fit. And Hollywood is brainwashing you into this. Hollywood is brainwashing you to say that there's too many people in the universe and we're going to click our fingers and launch a biological campaign on somebody to get rid of half the world's population. Just saying.
Yeah. I mean, all you have to do is change the name of a few characters and...
You should go and look at Nick Fury, man. It's actually really good.
I can probably just take that Thanos movie, and just, mute it out and put in my own dubbing. And I keep everything else. I can make it into...
Insert political figure. Insert Prime Minister Rutter. Insert Prime Minister Albanese. Insert fucking President Biden, wherever it is. You can fit those characters to those stories. It definitely works, and you could kind of just slightly rewrite the story, ever so slightly.
Yeah, some of the wording, and you probably use AI to come up with put them into the scene, right? It probably wouldn't be that difficult. There's a weekend project for somebody out there who's bored. Who knows?
I've got 2 days off coming up. No more Unspoken Truth. I'll do that for us.
So CBDCs, people, please. It's coming. You can't wait anymore. You have to start taking measures now to preserve your freedom in whatever way that you can. And Rob, pretty soon I'm going to tell you how you can join the Unspoken Truth community. And I really hope that some of you decide to join and start taking control of your life.
Absolutely. All right, let's take a break and check that out. This video will show you exactly how to do that. In this crazy, uncertain world, we all need a way to protect and insulate ourselves from the outside forces that we simply cannot control. I'm a news junkie, and after a lifetime of constantly immersing myself in the darkness and the despair that engulfs the world, the path to shield myself and my family has become crystal clear. I want to invite you to come and join me in the Unspoken Truth community, where I'll show you how I protect my family from this crazy world. You'll get access to 3 masterclasses worth over $1,000, as well as our live events, training, and community of truthers just like you. Come on over to the unspokentruth.com.au and join us for just 50 cents a day. What are you waiting for? Get started now at the unspokentruth.com.au.
All right,
we've had some pretty big developments over the last couple of days with what the Americans are planning to supply. So we've got the reptilian robot himself, Jake Sullivan, there saying the US will provide Ukraine with cluster munitions, and they're talking now about supplying ATACMS missiles that go into the M270 and to the HIMARS systems as well. So, yeah, it's I don't know if you call it an escalation of the conflict, but there's a couple of reasons that they're doing something like this. Now, not a lot of people. There was a while back, it must have been a year ago or so, that they connected the high-speed anti-radiation missiles to the Ukrainian MiG-29s and to their Su-27s. So a HARM missile is designed to take out an enemy radar. So what that does, on the first day of the war, the vast majority of stealth fighters are tasked with a role called SEAD, suppression of enemy air defenses. So I'm going to send large packages and large groups of aircraft into enemy territory to take down their command and control, and I'm going to turn their eyes and ears off. And that's what SEAD is. And SEAD is typically done with stealth aircraft in our militaries these days, in a fifth-generation Air Force, in a fifth-generation country. But the HARM missile has been notoriously unreliable and ineffective over a dozen conflicts in the last 30 years that it's been implemented. The HARM missile came from the Shrike in Vietnam. That's where SEAD came from. That's where it all came from. But over the years, in the first Gulf War, the second Gulf War, in Afghanistan, not really used in Afghanistan, but in the first and second Gulf Wars, it was really super ineffective. And the thing, when you do some research about who goes after these actual installation, these complexes with HARM missiles, you come up with a bunch of people called wild weasels. So wild weasels are F-16 squadrons. Yeah. So what is Ukraine getting? They're getting Vipers. They're getting F-16s. What can you put on a wild weasel? Well, you can put a harm on it. And what else can you put on it? The thing that is most effective that goes up against a enemy air defense system, I'll show you, is called a WICMID. And a WICMID is a wind correction munition dispenser. So WICMIDs are dropped from altitude, and here's the different versions of them. CBU stands for cluster bomb unit, CBU 87, 89, and 97. So there's different versions of these cluster bombs. But WICMID is the most effective thing to use against an enemy air defense complex. And they're cluster bombs. And the American Air Force and the Americans know that harm is notoriously unreliable. So a harm missile can be fired from 30 or 40 miles away, depending on how high or how fast an aircraft is going. And it has a very small warhead in it. And the problem with a harm missile is when you fire it at altitude to get at maximum range and fire it at, trying to do it over the horizon, it's got a big, long, white smoke trail that follows it. So the guys on the ground are like, they get an alert. And I was a radar operator. I know how this shit works. You're looking at your radar and you get an alert, they fired a missile. Turn the radar off. Radar goes off. Harm missile goes off. Harm missile is not a loitering munition. It doesn't fly around in the battlefield waiting for the radar to come back on and go. It looks for the radar signal and goes, that's where it is.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm going to home in on that radar signal. And the radar, the dish is spinning around like this. It's spinning round and round, and it's designed to hit the dish and hit it. But the harm missile has only got a very small warhead in it. I think from memory, it's just like 40 pounds or 40 kilos or something like that. It's really small. I have to look at that properly to know the exact numbers. But it's pretty ineffective, because if you smack that radar, sure, it's a delicate piece of equipment, and it's an exquisite piece of equipment is the way you would describe that in the military, but it can be replaced, and we can fix that. What you need to do is to destroy the command and control truck, because you can't replace that $10 million truck with all the computers and all the hardware in it that controls all the systems. And you can't do that with a harm missile. What you're doing with a harm missile, the package that goes in will be harm shooters at first. They kind of know where it all is. They fire all their harm missiles at them. The radar operators turn their radars off, and then the attack aircraft go in and attack the complexes. So we have aircraft that can fire harm missiles on the front end, MiG-29, Su-27. Now we're going to give them WICMID cluster munitions to go and destroy their complexes properly once and for all. And if we don't use the WICMIDs to do that, we might be able to use the ATACMS missiles to do that as well, because they're cluster munitions as well. You were going to say something there? Go ahead.
Well, maybe the Pentagon knows that they're useless, so they're just pawning them up. Hey guys, we're tired of keeping it in the warehouse. We'll just give it to you guys.
So there's a guy out there, his name's Dan Hampton, and Dan Hampton has written a bunch of books, and he was an F-16 pilot in the Second Gulf War. And if you read his book, he was in a wild weasel squadron, and so he's the guy, the flight lead that goes in and kicks in all the doors and takes down all these enemy air defense complexes, so the strike aircraft can come in and then we can get air superiority to do that. And the Ukrainian Air Force are training now on F-16 to do just that. So they're gonna get 2 or 3 squadrons of these. Some of those, one of the squadrons will be a wild weasel squadron. Mark my words. And they'll be launching harm missiles and WICMID to go and destroy the complexes, and then the packages that come in behind them will be the strike aircraft to actually shut them down. So everybody's worried about cluster munitions on the battlefield, but the cluster munitions that they get will be used to destroy enemy air defenses and the complexes that go with them. But are you going to use cluster munitions against troops in the open? Well, I don't know, man. You might. It's been used pretty effectively in the past, but there's other ways to actually get that done. And when you start talking about the nuances of what weapon systems should be used based on what platforms, you don't know what the Ukrainians have got. You don't know how they would employ those systems. All you know is the capability of those systems, but the employment of those systems really is determined by the strategies that are being used, the longer term strategies that are out there. So let me just shift gears here for you, and I'll show you the deep state map, and I'll show you why all of this stuff actually matters and what it is that I'm talking about. So let me just grab the map. So double check it. So that's the deep state map. So when we look at Ukraine and what's actually happening, deep state have introduced a new thing over here which shows you the dug-in positions. So everything that is black, a little black line, is like a trench line that is known about. There's more than this, of course, when you look at different maps and different open source intelligence resources, but it kind of gives you an idea of where the Russians have dug in. So the Russians know, and we've telegraphed it for a little while, that the counterattack is supposed to come from Zaporizhia to cut in half the southern part of Ukraine. Because if we are able to cut the Russians in half, they're no longer to be able to be resupplied from Crimea, and they can't resupply Crimea from the northeast either. So that's how the Ukrainians want to win the war. So are you going to use cluster munitions against troops in the open here against these trenches? Well, apparently there's like a couple of 100,000 people down here, so I think it would be pretty ineffective to use cluster munitions here. And that's why I say the cluster bombs that you're going to get are going to be used to go against enemy air defense systems, which will help the Ukrainians get more air superiority, because they're not going to put F-16s or Vipers in that part of the world if they don't have air superiority. So that's why I think you're going to get a Wild Weasel squadron, a strike squadron, and then an air-to-air squadron. They're going to get 3 squadrons of jets that have 12 to 15 aircraft in each squadron, and that's actually the disposition of what it is that they're going to go after. Because how else would you do it? They're just going to do it on a very small scale, and with half a dozen, maybe they'll have as many as 6 squadrons, maybe one's a training squadron as well, and then one more will be an operational conversion unit or something like that as well. But the makeup of what they've got and the weapon systems that they've got, I don't think they're going to be there to take out these trenches that are here. If we were going to do that, the only way you could do that is with close support aircraft and JTACs on the ground, because you need to know exactly where they are. Because aircraft flying around at 30 or 40,000 feet up here are going to have a hard time seeing the troops on the ground. That's why you need the JTACs to actually see it. So that kind of lets me segue a little bit here into why all of the fuss about Zaporizhia in the last couple of weeks. So open source intelligence and has been telegraphing for a while that on the 5th, 6th or 7th of July, there was going to be an attack on the Zaporizhia power plant. The Russians said that they were going to leave there. The Ukrainians said that they were going to blow it up. And we had this back and forth that was going on in the media. And now what I think is actually happening, I could be completely wrong here, folks. I've been wrong before. But let me just show you, let me just stop the share there for a second and just remind you of what happened. So this is Zaporizhia here in the bottom right-hand side of this picture. That's the before they blew up the dam scenario. Here is the after they blew up the dam scenario. And when I say they, I don't know who they actually are. Was it the Russians or the Ukrainians? Now, as I look at those pictures, and I'm reminded of those pictures, before, after, CIA. Now, when I join these dots, watch me join these dots here for you. When I go back to the deep state map, I come back here. So remember the after picture, there's no water in the river there. There's very little water in the river there. So now, do we need a pontoon to get across the Dnipro River here? This is Zaporizhia just here on the bottom of the map. So can we get across here without a pontoon? The answer is yes. So how much water is there? What will we need to do? Well, not very much. We need to get across there. What's the distance across from there to there? Yeah, the distance is 8.9 kilometers. What about from here to, let me do that again. Grab the ruler from this place here to here is 4 kilometers, or call it 5 kilometers across there. Could they make it across the river there in the dry riverbed? The answer is yes. And look what the Russians have done. The Russians have assumed that there's no way that the Ukrainians could get across the river there, and they've got no defenses there. So if the Ukrainians can get across the river here from Nikopol or from these places here, because there's no water in the river, they'll be able to take the ground with their armor and their maneuver warfare because there's no Russians dug in. And then they'll be able to quickly get down to this part and cut the Russians in half. That's why I think there's been so much fuss around the power plant, is because there is no defenses. So right now we can see the fighting. We're in the green part here and the blue part. That's where the fighting's going on. And if you look at all the disposition of the Russian troops, there's a lot of them, right? And we come around to the north here around near Bakhmut as well. That's well defended. These are defended positions. The Russians are dug in here. There's no way you're going to unseat them from the Donetsk and Luhansk areas there. And I doubt you're going to be able to unseat them from the southern part of Ukraine here. But are you able to open here, a front here, like a beachhead here, like a D-Day style invasion here? I think the short answer is yes. And maybe that's why there was all the fuss about, hey, they're going to blow it up, they're going to blow it up, because that's actually where the assault was going to come from. But because all of the mainstream media picked it up, and the consequences of blowing that up or something like that happening are extreme, you're going to have all sorts of problems. But this is a potential area that the Ukrainians might go into. And that, I suggest, is maybe the reason. Maybe that's been the whole reason the whole time for all the fuss about the power plant. And, hey, they're going to blow it up. And the Russians are like, no, they're going to attack it. They're going to, all this back and forth, all this bullshit. I saw another report yesterday about the power plant saying that 5 of the 6 reactors are offline. They're at a cold idle, and one of them is at a hot idle, which means we can turn it back on. And the reason for that is because the reactors need power themselves. But the only way that they're powering the reactors to keep everything cool and working and in order is with diesel generators. So that's part of the problem that we've got. Now, the report that I saw was someone pretty objective saying that the power plant has pretty much been offline for all of the war. So for the last better part of 18 months, it's been offline. So imagine a facility like that requires a lot of day-to-day maintenance. There needs to be a lot of work that happens on something like that. And they're running on a skeleton crew. And we know that because when the IAEA went there originally, they were like, oh my God, the people that are working here have worked like 4 or 5 months non-stop. They haven't had a break. And normally they would cycle the shifts through. It's just a normal workplace, a normal environment. And that's changed considerably. So this report was suggesting, that the power plant is a moot point because the power plant's been offline for the last 18 months. And in order to get it back online to make it usable, it's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars to fix it. And then the one reactor that is in a warm idle is allowed to produce electricity and create as much as they need for the local area. That's enough. That's why it's still there. But the rest of them are offline. And the reason for that is because they don't have the people to man it. So the Ukrainians are looking at it and going, well, it's a lost cause anyway. So there's nothing we can do with it. So if it's a lost cause, why don't we just, if we can assault across the river there and we can get across there and get a foothold there, then there's no way that they're going to be able to encapsulate us, because once we get our armor in there and once we get our infantry and our maneuver warfare in there, we'll be able to cut the Russians off. It's going to be a higher cost, but we'll be able to do it. So I think that that's actually what's going on. I'm not a general or a military strategist. I don't know what the Ukrainians have got in terms of assets and resources that they could bring to bear. But if the Russians have dug in everywhere except for there, wouldn't that be the natural place to do the assault? Seems to be. And then you look at all of the intelligence of the Ukrainians trying to shape the battlefield, saying the Russians are going to blow it up. Well, maybe they're not going to blow it up. Maybe you're going to blow it up with your artillery cover as you're firing artillery to keep the Russians' heads down as you're coming across the river. That's why, and that's why the Russians are going, we're not going to blow it up. They're going to blow it up. You're firing artillery to keep everybody's heads down, because the Russians, if I was a Russian commander, I'd put all the artillery inside the power plant. Oh, fucking fire. Go for it. Fire. I'll put all of my artillery there. So to stop the Ukrainians coming across. But we can see from the satellite photos that we're allowed to see in open source intelligence that the Russians haven't done that. So maybe the Ukrainians are actually going to get across there. And how else are you going to cover the advance? If you're going to cover the advance, the beach assault, you're going to do that with naval gunfire support and ships. And you're going to use the Marines, you're going to use aircraft to suppress everybody so you can get the infantry across. So the same thing is happening here. The only way you're going to get them across the Dnipro River is by suppressing them. You don't have enough aircraft to do that. You don't have enough anything to do. We've got lots of artillery to do that with, and it's only 4 or 5 kilometers away. You can easily do that. Now you can use that as cover to get your troops across, but you're doing that at risk of the power plant. Oh, fuck it, the power plant's fucked anyway. Just get rid of it, man. Fucking don't worry about it. And if it gets hit, it can be hit by a 747. If one of the rounds hits it, nothing's going to happen. It'll be fine. And the Russians are going to say, see, I told you so. You blew it up yourself. And then the media is going to go crazy for all of this shit. This is what's happening, man. This is what's unfolding right now. It's like, I can't believe it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't compete with you on the topic of military tactics and strategies. But my layman's opinion on this fuss over the power plant, I think it was a fundraising campaign by Zelensky. I think he wants more money.
Did you see him walking the red carpets around Europe in the last couple of days, man?
You beat me too. I was just going to ask you about that. And also was going to ask you about this big push that they've been talking about now for months, that this big summer push that we've been expecting out of, it doesn't seem, unless I'm missing something in the news, it doesn't seem like it's gone anywhere. And everyone keeps saying, yes, but it is coming, and it is coming. And people are speculating it's going to come there, or it's going to be there, or it's going to be there. Well,
they're doing exactly what I'm doing. Everybody in the media is doing the same thing. They're looking and going, well, you're taking back a little bit of the ground, but in the southern part of Ukraine, it's so heavily mined. There's no way that you can get across there. And everybody's talking about cluster munitions. Don't worry about cluster munitions. There's like 5 million mines in the ground there in the most productive part of Ukraine. That's not going to be able to be used for the next 50 years until it's demined. And it's just ridiculous to suggest that they can actually break through when the Russians are so heavily fortified and dug in there. You work on probably a 10-to-1 ratio loss. There's going to be 1 Russian killed for every 10 Ukrainians killed there trying to get across those fields that are mined. And we've seen footage of that. I've seen footage of soldiers being blown to pieces, man, by walking on. Bradley comes down, ramp comes down, soldiers get out, kaboom! They step on an anti-tank mine, man.
I've seen videos. I saw one video of a Ukrainian soldier with a long stick picking up a mine and just throwing it in the woods. And that's someone else.
It's like a piece of dog shit, man. He leverages it up. And he's like, nothing's going to happen if you don't hit it on the top. If I just flick it out of there, it'll be fine.
Yeah, you flick it out, but it did blow up. So someone else had to worry about it. He didn't mark it. I don't think he.
The farmer.
The
guy who owns that land has to worry about it later.
Yeah. But NATO is having their big meeting this week, and Zelensky, I think I can just picture him, trying to sneak in, just kind of, worm his way into the meeting. Hey guys, I'm here.
Listen, man, just put a suit on, will you? For fuck's sake, the leader of a country, get out of that bloody t-shirt. At least he's not wearing. At least he's not walking around the red carpet in a jumper because it's nice and warm in Europe.
His wife probably put the hammer down. Hey, listen, if you don't embarrass me, man. If you're going to be on the red carpet, at least. Well, okay. So I don't know though. You got Zelensky hasn't really produced that breakout move yet, and there was word that Zelensky is putting a lot of pressure on the military guys. We need a big win before the NATO meeting. Do you remember?
And they're like, well, if you throw them into the meat grinder, they're going to get chewed up and spat out. They're all going to be destroyed. And all the gear they've given us is going to be destroyed. And so are those troops. And those commanders are right to be holding back. Because
he's starting to sound like Hitler, right? Like, yes, it can be done. Just do it. Don't argue with me. Just do it. Right?
I believe the correct term that they used, I think I watched a series about it. It's actually really good. They're called sycophants. Yeah, I believe that's the correct terminology. I don't know the exact definition of that, but it's something along the lines of the boss tells you to do something and everybody around them tells them that it can be done and it will happen. And they worship at the feet of the boss because they're the almighty and they're the living deity. But the reality is that the people that are below the sycophants there that are in the inner circle are like, they're the ones that pay the price and it can't be done. And they'll keep telling that leader that it can be done until the destruction and the downfall actually happens.
Still think this ends at a table with Zelensky signing the BRICS agreement.
Well, at least he'll have some value in his dollar at the end of it.
If I were advising him, I would tell him to sign the BRICS agreement. And then I would have a GoPro. Then I'd have a GoPro in the corner of the Pentagon room where all the generals are, watch their heads blow up. As he's doing that.
This guy's head's going to blow up. This guy.
Yeah.
Jake Sullivan, man. I feel sorry for that dude. He looks like he's about 12 years old.
But I would love it. I mean, this whole war is such a tragic scam.
Isn't it?
It is,
isn't it?
And it's not a war between Ukraine and Russia. This is a war between the U.S. and Russia. It's a proxy war. And make no mistake about that. And the people who are really interested in this war are the money people, the J.P. Morgans and the BlackRocks of the world. Those are the people who benefit. If you ask yourself who is going to benefit from this war, those are the people who would benefit.
That's so correct. And the other thing to highlight the fact that it's all bullshit is that at every point when the Ukrainians ask for something, everybody immediately says no. But within a couple of weeks, sometimes a few months, it takes a bit longer, the answer is yes. Can we have these weapon systems? No, we're not giving you that. It's too escalatory. No. But then a couple of weeks later, guess what? You know, the cargo plane full of those pallets rocks out, and then you get what you need. You know, they said that they would never give them heavy armor. They would never give them tanks. We would never do that. Never, ever. That's the escalation. That's a red line. We could never do that. And then the British go, we'll give you one Challenger tank. One. And then the Germans are like, right, they're going to give them tanks. We'll give them some tanks too. You want tanks? We got tanks. Look at all the tanks we've got. You can have our stockpiles of tanks.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, we need some Humvees. Okay, cool, we can give you those. The Australian government, we got hundreds of these things sitting in a fucking warehouse over here, not doing anything. Nothing. Send them, get them, and off. Just one red line after another.
I think Zelensky has to worry as much, if not a little bit more than Putin. He has to worry about the populace of Western Europe, because they're starting, the population, they're starting to riot. They're starting to push back. They're starting to say, we don't want to get involved. Right? And even here in America. So I think they're looking at the clock. I think we got to have a win fast before the public, overtakes, like Vietnam, right?
No one's ever going to get what they want. That's the thing with this, and digging your heels in and saying, we need to go back to the pre-2014 borders. That's never going to happen, man. You agreed to the Minsk deals back in the day, and then you just threw that out. So why would the Russians believe anything that you say in any negotiation? And that's why the Russians are like, we're not negotiating with these fuckwits anymore. No, it's gangster one negotiating with gangster two. How could you believe any of it? No, neither of them are trustworthy, and neither of them can be believed and face value. And that's why it's just not ending.
Well, there are guaranteed winners. There's JP Morgan, there's BlackRock, there's Citibank, there's the WEF, there's the World Bank, there's the IMF. So the people who have money.
You missed one. BRICS.
BRICS? Well, yeah, that's again the BRICS, right? Yeah, so right. So the BRICS, if you sign the agreement, they're in. But the people who are guaranteed to make money, no matter what the outcome, are the people who have to rebuild that freaking country.
Yeah, and it's going to take 50 years, man.
Yep.
It's been completely decimated, a little bit like Europe was after the end of World War II. Not on that giant scale, but certainly on that scale of that country. It's been completely decimated and destroyed. It's unbelievable.
If you are in graduate school studying engineering, I'd recommend you turn your attention to studying bridge building, and then get a job in Ukraine. You'll be set there for 30
construction,
years.
Learn construction in some form.
That's right.
Yeah,
learn Ukrainian.
Kick ass. That's good. All right, Ed. We've had a very, very busy week. We've covered a lot of different things. You want to close out this week with some fun stuff? What have you got? What do you want to know about me, man? What you see is what you get. I'm very plain vanilla. There's not too much more about it.
Okay. Well, are we going to do our top 5 today?
All right. Why don't we do our top 5 guilty pleasures?
Okay. So today we are introducing a new segment that we will do from time to time called our top 5 list. We'll pick fun little topics, and Rob and I will make our own list. We won't share them until the show starts, and we'll compare the top 5 list. And today's top 5 list is going to be top 5 guilty pleasures. So I got mine queued up. Do you have yours? You just have yours written down on a piece of paper, or did you?
I've written it down. I've got a photo or two that I can share with you as well. Okay. So let me get organized and get you those photos. But why don't you go first? What are your top 5, Ed?
All right. Here goes. Now I did mine like a month ago. I've been waiting for Rob. So
that's because I'm so boring, man. I don't have any guilty pleasures, man.
Rob, get your wife and daughter to help you out with the list or something. Make it fun. Rob's such a Boy Scout. He has no guilty pleasures.
I don't, man. I get out of bed at like 4 o'clock in the morning. Like I sit here and talk about the news for hours. I make videos, go to the gym, eat eggs, and then eat dinner, and then that's it. Do it all again.
You're such a Boy Scout. All right, here we go. As part of living a healthy life, and we all know. Okay, so we all know that we're supposed to eat well as part of living a healthy life. And we all know which foods are good for us and which ones are bad for us. But listen, every once in a while, we just have to treat ourselves, don't we? So this is a list of my top 5 guilty pleasures. Number 5, T-bone steak. Now, I know what you're saying. This isn't really junk food or anything, but when I was making up my list, it somehow just made it on the on the list. I love a good T-bone steak. But after all, it is protein, so it is actually good for you. So this probably shouldn't be on the list, but I just could not resist myself. A nice medium rare, steak with plenty of fat on it. So maybe that's my guilty pleasure part, is I like the fat. There's a lot of flavor in that fat. Mashed potatoes and gravy. I'll tell you, I have a really hard time turning down a really good mashed potatoes and gravy. And I do have to have the gravy. For me, it's kind of like eating cookies without milk. I have to have the gravy. Number 3, Captain Crunch. And yes, it's Captain, not Captain. Captain Crunch. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Come on, Ed. You're an adult. What the hell are you doing eating, sugary children's cereal? Well, hey, this is a list of guilty pleasures, okay? And it's not like I get this all the time. This is just once in a while, when I'm at the store, if I'm grocery shopping on an empty stomach and I go down that aisle, I will sometimes grab a box of Captain Crunch. And I don't know what to tell you. I have a sweet tooth. And listen, again, this is a list of guilty pleasures, and I am exposing myself to you. I'm admitting the things that I like. Number 2, chocolate milkshakes. Oh my God. This is, I can have a chocolate milkshake anytime. I don't care what time of year it is, what time of day it is. A good chocolate shake just really, really goes down well for me. Again, I've got a sweet tooth. And sometimes when I'm out and about and I see a Dairy Queen or something, I just, pull over. Again, once in a while, you just have to treat yourself, right? And number 1, White Castle hamburgers, also known as sliders, right? I actually get the cheeseburgers, but any White Castle hamburger or cheeseburger, will do. I don't go for the other stuff, like the fish burgers. No, if I'm going to go to White Castle, I'm going to have a freaking slider. And it's best, of course, when you eat them hot. They will work as snacks if you want to take them home and save them and eat them, later in the day. That'll work. But boy, they're best when they're right off the grill. And sliders is really good. Whoever came up with that nickname, boy, did they nail it. It just slides down. And I always just love it while I'm eating it. And then I always regret it about a half hour later. Now, there are many places in the country who actually do not have White Castles. This is probably one of the worst junk foods you can have. But man, every once in a while, you just got to treat yourself to a White Castle slider. And that's my list of top 5 guilty pleasures. What's yours? Put it in the comment section below. There you have it.
Sorry, I really do like these things because it really shows me the unspoken truth who Ed Anderson really is. Now I see what you're really getting up to. It's not all finance and trading and charts all day long. You're smacking those sliders down your neck a little bit too often, maybe, eh?
Oh, no, not enough. Like once a year, literally not very often at all.
What's White Castle, man? I've never heard of that.
It's a fast food chain, mostly here in the Midwest. Most of the country do not have them, actually. They're kind of rare. I'm sure you don't have them in Australia.
No, I've never heard of it. No.
So if someone came to Minnesota and they wanted, I would treat them White Castle isn't exactly unique to Minnesota, but it's not, there aren't many other places. So Midwest mostly, like Chicago, Twin Cities. Right. But yeah, the hamburgers, like I said, like the worst food you could possibly put down your gullet. But man, do they taste good. Oh man, they go down good.
And what about the chocolate milkshakes, man?
Well, what can you say? Who doesn't like a chocolate milkshake? Come on. I thought aren't you a rub-blooded man? Not that
I can't drink the milk, man. I can't. I can drink milk in my coffee. Like even if that's like a flat white and it's half coffee and half milk, I'm good. Even if I drink 2 or 3 of those in a row, I'm good. But if you gave me a milkshake like that to drink, man, that would make me so sick. Like,
really?
Oh,
so you're lactose
the lactose in the milk, man, I just can't tolerate it.
Oh, really? Okay.
I researched it, and some people don't have. So apparently, I don't know how true it is. I don't know. I can't see inside my gut, but you've got acid inside your gut that can break down the lactose in the milk. And if you have a small amount of it, it's okay. But if you have more than what your gut can actually break down, that's when you get a really upset stomach from it. And yeah, they're just like,
Right.
it's like a laxative if I drink something like that. So I could have a mouthful of your milkshake like that and go, oh, that is so good. But that's it. That's all I get,
Yeah.
right?
Well, that's too bad. I didn't know you were handicapped.
I'm handicapped in like chocolate ice cream and stuff like that as well. Like I can have a scoop of ice cream, like in a cup, but if you give me like 2 scoops or a whole ice cream cone like that, made me crook as a dog, man. I just can't do it.
How about other sweets? How about like chocolate cake or just chocolate bar?
Well, let me do my top 5 for you.
Okay.
So, I've got 3 images here for you, which are kind of the reason it's difficult for me is because I can't pin it down. But when I thought about it, it's actually variations of things that I like. So I'll start with the sweet thing here. So do you know what that is?
That is tiramisu.
Yeah, there it is. You lived in Italy, you know, right?
Yep,
My missus, Susie, she's a chef by trade, right? And she worked in a bunch of different Italian restaurants over the years because that's popular here in Australia. And she taught me how to make that. Oh my God. That is you go to the shop and you get a slice of tiramisu that sits on your plate. It's only small like that. But when you make it, you don't make it like a little slice like that. You got a whole packet of biscuits. You got all the ingredients and everything. You're making like a tray of it like that. And, it sits in the fridge and like, I'm like waiting and I'm waiting. Like, this thing comes out and I'm like 4 cups of coffee later and 4 slices of tiramisu later. I'm like, I don't need to eat for a week, man. That is a guilty pleasure. Yeah, haven't done that for a while, but I should definitely.
That's a good one. That's a good one. That's a good choice.
You know what the secret ingredient to tiramisu is?
Cocoa is Oreo cookies.
Kahlua.
Kahlua, okay.
Because Kahlua has that flavor, that gentle alcohol flavor in there, and yeah, man, that's the secret.
Is that part of the standard recipe, or is that just an extra ingredient that you have?
That's part of the Susie recipe, so it's standard for her.
Okay.
And I think she grew up as a young person drinking Kahlua at nightclubs and shit like that, and she liked that. Yeah, so it's like, what if we put a bit of Kahlua in that? Yeah, works an absolute treat. So the other, so what I would say to this beautiful thing that. This is one of the most delicious things on planet Earth, is just variations of that. Like, that is a guilty pleasure for me. Like, I don't really have like a sweet tooth like what you're describing, like for Captain Crunch cereal or for a chocolate milk shake or something like that. But if you put a piece of cake in front of me, like any cake, I'll eat it, man. That is definitely a guilty pleasure, and I like that.
Okay. See, this isn't so hard, is it, Rob? what you got going? You can think of
it's the kryptonite, right? Cake is the kryptonite. So here in Australia, we have a cake that's sold in the supermarkets called Madeira cake. And me and Danielle, like when Danielle was little, like always just mucking around, just fooling around with your kids, right? We'd get some Madeira cake, and sometimes she'd like poke my tummy and go, look like you're having too much Madeira cake, hey, Dad? I don't care. Just give me more cake. It's the kryptonite. There's always something really fun that we used to share together and laugh about. So variations of this bad boy are my nemesis. The next thing that I probably really like is these types of dishes like this. So a goulash.
Goulash,
Yeah, so my mum is German, right, and my dad is Ukrainian. I don't really remember that much from my dad's side of like traditional Ukrainian or Polish food. It was like a lot of cabbage based stuff. There was like a lot of potato based stuff. They're peasants, right? They're peasant farmers, so it's just the cheapest food that's out there, and they used to make it really quite delicious. So I remember the cabbage-based dishes were really nice, but I also remember from my mum's side, the grandparents' side of it, the German food, and I have more of a connection to that than I do to my dad's parents, because my dad's parents didn't speak English. That's the first thing, so that was like really hard, and I never spoke Ukrainian or Polish or Russian or anything like that. But my mum's parents spoke English, and so we had that. They always seemed to be shouting at each other in German. I don't know, maybe it's just the German language is really harsh.
Yeah, exactly.
I always remember my granddad being like loud, and the language is harsh, and like, why are they arguing all the time? I don't know.
That's love talk,
yeah, just how they talk, right? Yeah. And I also remember my dad speaking, Ukrainian or Polish or whatever he was speaking to my grandparents, and they always seemed like they were raising their voices at each other. And you don't have to understand language to understand the body language. It's like, everybody's so cranky all the time, man, but the food is delicious. Like, I used to like that. So the sausage, if I thought of like the cuisine that I like the most, probably German cuisine, surprisingly, followed by Japanese cuisine. And they're polar opposites, right? I had Japanese food last night.
Yeah.
You know, when you're eating really lean cuts of meat, really like raw fish, it's really super lean. And then you think of the German side of stuff where it's like sausages and stews and potato, and it's all peasant food, right? Just dressed up to be really delicious. So that is a nemesis of mine. I make a pretty mean goulash. I learned to master that as well, because it's like my favorite dish. And I'm like, well, how do I learn to master this? And, you know, with the power of YouTube and Google and all of those things, I've been able to, and I've made it like enough times to know what actually works and to have a little taste of it and tweak it. And Susie's a chef, right? So she teaches me all these other things as well, which is kind of cool. So variations of stews like that are what I really, really enjoy. It's really nice. And I guess the last one I've got for you is, who doesn't like
bacon?
That?
Oh, geez. I hate it.
Oh, really?
I'm like the only person I've ever met who doesn't like bacon. My son,
I like it because
my son loves it. I can't.
You're not fussed? Too much fat?
It's so salty. It's like, why don't you just pour the salt straight in your mouth? You know, it's too salty. I'm not a particular fan of salty foods.
Yeah, you prefer the sweet stuff.
Yeah. I mean,
there's a lot of science around gut health related to salty food. And I was listening to some podcasts recently where the question was, why is it that as a man I can go and eat an entire packet of potato chips like that? And the scientist on the other end of it, he says, because actually what you're doing when you're eating the potato chips is it's salty. And the saltiness is satiating your brain and your gut at the same time. Your gut is telling your brain that you're satiated. That's why you stop eating, right? But the reason that you can eat the entire packet of potato chips and you feel hungry is because you're not actually craving potato chips. You're craving protein. And protein, think of the T-bone steak that you like so much, is generally a little bit salty. And you might put some salt on it to make it enhance the flavors of it. And something like bacon as well is quite salty. And so when you eat something like that, that's actually what your gut is asking for. I'm looking for protein, right. And then I eat a potato chip, which kind of is salty and sort of has the same sort of qualities. And you're saying to your gut, there's your protein, but your brain goes, that's not protein, you idiot. That's just a salty potato chip. Go and eat some protein. And then I'm looking for something to actually satiate myself like that as well. Think of your behavior like, I could eat an entire packet of potato chips like that, just in that example. But if you gave me some cheese and crackers, I probably only have like 2 or 3 pieces of cheese and crackers. And that's because in the cheese, whatever type of cheese, if it was just plain cheddar cheese or it was some camembert or some brie or something like that, that cheese is salty and it has protein in it. You eat it and you're like, oh, that's it. I don't need to eat anymore.
Yeah.
And if you're craving something salty like that, then I promise you that you eating some potato chips, you eat a whole packet of potato chips, all the salt there. Think of all the salt that's in there and all the fat and all the bad stuff that's in there. You're craving something salty? Okay, just go and eat like 2 olives. I promise you won't want to eat many more than that because they're so salty. And the flavor is so strong like that you probably don't want to eat more than that. You have to really like olives to eat a lot of olives like that. If they're fresh, it's quite different. But if you're eating it out of a jar and it's pickled into salt water or into vinegar or something like that, you can't eat very many of them because the flavors are so strong, right? And the flavors are salty. So I really like the aspect of listening to your gut. And I think maybe that's part of the reason that I had a bit of a hard time compiling a list for you, because I'm very structured in what I eat. You know, I'll eat 3 or 4 eggs every day at breakfast and I'll have something with that. Sometimes I'll have salmon, but when I'm like feeling naughty, I'll have bacon. But I won't cook bacon so it looks like that. You know, that's cooked in a fry pan. I'll cook it on the barbecue and it burns all the fat off it. So it's much leaner and it has that grill kind of feel and taste to it, which is kind of what I like. But I love bacon because it's such a strong flavor and it forms the base of so many dishes. You know, you have like onion, garlic, and bacon. In German cooking, you use a thing called speck. And speck is the fatty part of the pork as well. It's the same sort of thing as bacon, but it's just kind of, it's different. And you cut it up differently. Like bacon is quite thin and it's cut. A piece of speck is a big chunk of meat and you've got to dice it up so it's different. But
Okay.
it forms the basis of a lot of dishes.
So your part of the refrigerator has eggs.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
When I had the blood clot in my leg a couple of years ago, the doctor said, you know, asked, is there any do's or don'ts? And he's like, yeah, one of the things, no, not really. You're right. Just take the medicine. You'll be okay. The blood thinners. You know, so of course I go to Google and go, is there anything that I can eat that helps me blood thinners? And they're like, yeah, if you eat pineapple, if you eat this, and there's a whole series of foods that you can eat to help you with a blood clot. But then there's a whole lot of don't eats.
That's right.
Don't eat leafy greens. Don't do this. Don't
Dark
do that.
leafy greens.
Yeah, yeah. And I opened the fridge and there's dark leafy greens, and I pointed at it and I said, I'm never eating that shit ever
Well, you
again.
never would anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
But
I was forced to, right?
Yeah,
I was
now you
eating
tell
the
your wife-
broccoli.
I can tell your wife, no, I can't eat that. Doctor's orders.
I've got a blood clot permanently.
yeah, I would love to, sweetheart, but doctor says I can't.
So there you go, Ed. You learned some more about me and I learned some more about you.
There
What's
you
your
go.
takeaway?
You know, people never know what they're going to get at the Untold Truth. And next week, we're going to have another top 5. And next week, we're going to reveal our top 5 celebrity crushes. So
Well, I tried to do that one, ladies and gentlemen, and I had a hard time because all the pretty girls are really young and it feels creepy to me. And then Ed said, no, they could be dead or alive. It's all right. I'm like, okay, cool. We can do that.
Yeah, all of mine are dead. But but in their prime, you know, we're talking about, you know, so in your prime. So you can you can go all the way back to Catherine the Great if you want. You can.
All will be revealed next week for you, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, if you've joined us here on The Unspoken Truth this week, thank you so much for your support. Thanks, Paulie, for joining in today. Really appreciate your comments, and I've been getting a bit of feedback on some other platforms, not just YouTube, and I appreciate that as well. Thanks for following along in Telegram and on Twitter, and make sure you get a copy of this show as a podcast as well. All right, Ed, let's wrap it up, mate. We're nudging 2 hours. Can you believe it?
Did we come in under an hour?
We've yet to do that. Let's get out of here. We'll see you next week. Same bat time, same
Bat channel.
God save the Queen. See you, mate.